Hello, my name is Honey from Valley Atbal, and you are listening and looking to Scene World Podcast.
Well, hello there. It's the Scene World Podcast. I'm AJ.
I'm Joerg. Yeah.
And we're doing this again. I feel like we just recorded an intro. Not
yeah,
5
we
minutes
push
ago.
this out weekly lately because we have so much backload and we have to get this going until the new year started.
Yeah, in a minute we're going to be talking to David Reichelt. He is the CEO of Color Switch Phoenix, and he has a game called Color Switch that we will be talking about. It's a mobile game, and it's a fun one, and there'll be lots of
True, and we are actually primarily talking about Color Switch 2 that was actually released in July.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, which is probably when we spoke to him.
That is right.
Yeah, and there was some drama too with the original Color Switch, which we cover on this. So it's a really interesting interview. So everybody stick around and check it out and all that.
If you are the drama queen, then Scene World is the drama king. Just in our last episode, we spoke about the watermelon Patreon drama or fiasco, and now we have an interview, and in this bit we talk about the Color Switch drama.
Yes, at least it's not Twin Galaxies.
That's true.
So that's in a minute. In the meantime, I've got a couple of little bits of news, which are.
Leave it to you because I have no news for this news.
Well, I got 2 bits of magazine news. We released our Scene World issue number 30. That came out. And simultaneously, well, not simultaneously, around the same time, Vandalism News was released at Syntax, I think was the party. Syntax 2020.
Yeah, the party in Australia.
Mm-hmm. Which I am also a staff member of, so I will announce that conflict of interest immediately. I will disclose that. Aside from all those, the TRS 8-bit newsletter was also released. It's
nice.
It's over 80 pages of stuff about the TRS 80, and it's a free download, and we'll put a link to it here. Along with that, there's a pre-sale for Club MSX magazine, number 11. I guess it comes with bonus stuff with like a poster and a disc, and it's again it's in Portuguese because I guess that's one of the places that the MSX was really big, and it costs $24.90, whatever the Portuguese currency is.
Euro.
Well, no, this has an R and a dollar sign.
Then it's not in Portugal. Portugal uses euro.
Yeah. Well, either way.
Let's see.
I think it's Brazil. I think this is Brazilian. Brazil speaks Portuguese. Yes.
Then you are talking about Rios, which is the currency.
There you go.
Of Brazil.
There you go. So it costs 24 Rios and 90, which is about $5. So we're not talking about breaking your bank here. It's $5. And we'll put a link to that as well because it looks really interesting. And if you're into the MSX as a computer, check it out. Speaking about other computers, TRS-80 is one that was big in the olden days, and the results of the Double Do 2020 competition.
TRS-80, wasn't that Radio Shack?
Yes, the Trash 80. the Double Do competition winners were announced in this newsletter, the TRS 8-bit newsletter that I just mentioned before. So you can check out what the I guess this was a competition for both games, for both software and hardware. And it there was both a monochrome and a color category because of the way the computer works and stuff. And I don't know what I haven't looked at it, so I don't know what the results of the winners are, but yeah, it's worth checking out. I'm gonna look at the magazine later and learn about it because it's one of those things where I'm fascinated by these retro machines, and usually I'm fascinated by how much they are garbage compared to the Commodore 64.
So they can tell us more about it in a week.
Yes.
When we do the next news.
Yeah. And again, going back to machines that are not the Commodore 64, there is I don't know anything about this. This is completely, if I get any of this wrong, you are free to correct me. Send an email.
Yeah, contact at SceneWorld.
Or podcast at SceneWorld, I believe it is.
Exactly.
So there is for the ZX Spectrum, there is a cartridge called the ZX Dandinator Mini, which is equipped with an EEPROM, and is supposed to be a platform for developing and releasing game cartridges for that machine. They have now released Multiply, which is an add-on to the Dandinator cartridge that gives it SD card storage capacity. That allows you to easily have, I guess, SD card, sort of like an SD to IEC device that we've got thousands of them for the C64. This gives you sort of something like that on the ZX Spectrum, which I think may have been lacking before. But,
wow, nice.
But you have to also have the Dandinator Mini cartridge thing. But again, I know nothing about the ZX Spectrum, and I have no idea how it works, and no idea what any of this is. So I don't. So if I'm wrong about any of this, if this is not how this works, then please let us know, and we'll correct it in the next episode of this. But we'll put a link to where you can find this stuff and buy it if you have a ZX Spectrum and you want to play around with that.
Nice. Send me the links, and we put that all in the podcast description, as we always say.
Absolutely, yes. And we'll have that right down there below where you can see them as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
That's all I have for this news thing.
Awesome.
So
let's go and let's go switching colors.
Yes.
So today we are talking to another person, a new guest, and that would be David Reichelt. Hello.
Hey, welcome to the podcast.
Yes.
You got my last name correctly. I guess because you're European, you know how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to pronounce it.
Yeah. So, you are actually known for being a developer for mobile games, and you did Color Switch, and now recently you actually released the second version.
Yep.
Color Switch 2.
Uh-huh.
And interesting thing is that the concept. I mean, the first game was more like, if I'm not mistaken, you having a plug and you try to cross a circle in the right color in the right moment.
Yeah.
And the second game is more like, I would say, audio surf. It reminds me a bit of audio surf, where you go down a lane and then with the and then trying with a ball to hit obstacles in the same color. And from what I saw, the color switch game became pretty famous, pretty widespread over the past years in the mobile world. And I wonder, how did that all start for you? Did you wake up someday and decided, okay, I'm making a mobile game, or I'm becoming a mobile game developer?
It was very similar to what you just said, actually, because I never was a designer of anything. I was never a programmer. I only ever played games, since I was, 5 or something. But one day I had just moved into an apartment, and I went out to the living room, and my roommate was at his computer, and he was doing something, and I just was curious, and it turned out he was making a mobile game. And I just started asking questions about it. He said, yeah, you outsource the work to a developer. They do the artwork, they do this, they do that. And I thought, I always thought you had to program, but this outsourcing makes sense. And so I kind of started from there. And I think I was 33, so that's back in 2013 is when I got into it. And I had read a book, The Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and he always talked about a system of passive income. If you can create that, then you can get more time freedom to do other things. And so as soon as I saw what he was doing, I immediately thought of that book, and I thought, this is what he's talking about, because if you could create an app, a game that did really well, then that would be your passive income, and you could have more time freedom. And so that's basically how I got into it, just kind of on a whim.
And what did you do before? As I said, you weren't a mobile game developer per se in the first place.
Before, let's see, a lot of things. I mean, I was a medic in the military for several years. I was a music major. I was a film major for film editing. The last thing I did was a theater major. And during that is when I met that friend who was through a friend at the college, which was Cal State Northridge in Southern California. And the reason I did so many things is I always thought, well, if I had an interest, I would go explore that interest. And if I wasn't interested enough, then I would ditch it and I'd go to the next thing. And the military was more of my way to get out of town and just see the world. And then everything else that happened after that was really, if I hadn't joined the military, I wouldn't have done any of it. Because when you join the military and you kind of get outside your comfort zone and you're challenged in a big way and you're able to meet the challenge, you get this confidence, and then you have a confidence to try other things, which is what happened to me. And I just kept on trying one thing after another. But like film editing, I wouldn't care if I spent 30 grand on that school. If I didn't like it, but on to the next thing. So when I started making games, I was actually working as a pool cleaner. After all those experiences, I was cleaning pools, 80 grand in debt, barely paying my rent, and I would clean pools in the daytime, and at nighttime I would always just sit there on my computer all day long, no social life, just working on games. And I was working on games, creating games for 2 years. And in the beginning, I started outsourcing, but then when that game launched and it wasn't successful, I couldn't afford outsourcing again. I didn't have any more money because I had sold I had a bunch of cameras and film gear to finance that. And so all the other games, I had to learn how to do it myself. So I learned software that doesn't require any programming. And I built 40 games on Game Salad software. And then after that, none of those were successful. After that, I switched to BuildBox, and that's what I built Color Switch on, which again is a non-programming software that they have a new version of now that does 3D games. But yeah, that's kind of how the trajectory of all that.
It's quite interesting. I mean, as I said, you did games before that weren't successful. So what did change that you said, okay, now I found a concept that actually works and I'm going to try it again? I mean,
Sure.
the problem is nowadays there are so many things that have been there already.
Yeah.
How to make something new that is successful, but people not excusing you of it being a ripoff?
Oh, well, that's it's interesting. It doesn't matter how saturated a market is. All you have to do is find a hole that someone's not filling, find a problem that someone's not solving. I mean, in Steve Jobs' early days, you could have said the same thing. Like, you know what? Computer markets, there's already all these companies providing all the computers for all these businesses. There's no room. And he went the personal computer route where they weren't focusing. And I think they did have some personal computers, but they were either too expensive or just too cumbersome to use. And so he found that hole and he filled it. So it's the same with games. The first 40 games, I was focused on, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was taking action and creating without really understanding how to make a game. So I would clone games. I would, I would just look at what themes I thought people would enjoy, and so I would just reskin a template or something and label it ninjas or whatever. And after I got a lack of results from all of that, I had to improve what I was doing. And so I would always think, okay, why did this game not do well? What am I missing? What can I do better next time? And I would always study something, whether it was a book or an interview on a website or whatever, and I always put new information in my head. And I had this book, which is called Thinker Toys, and it's a book of creative thinking techniques. And this is how everything is actually created. It's the concept of conceptual blending, where you blend concepts together to create new concepts. And so whether an industry is saturated or not, it doesn't matter, because if you understand how to use these tools, which you already use, you just aren't aware of it until you actually find a resource that actually tells you what it is, then you realize, oh, I can create whatever I want. And when you do it with intention, which is what the book teaches you, then you can create something powerful. And so how I created Color Switch was I used these techniques in Thinker Toys. They're called Slice and Dice and Scamper. Slice and Dice shows you how to take any concept and chop it up into all its attributes. So a simple example is a cup. It's got size, weight, shape, material. You can drink from it. It's universally understood, and so on and so on. Now, what this does is it gives you all these perspectives to attack your problem from. So if I live in an imagined world where the only cups are glass and 40% of people break their cups and they have to spend money buying new ones, I can solve that problem if I hone in on material and change glass for plastic. And in a world where there are only glasses, I can make a lot of money because I just solved the problem. So this book teaches you how to find those holes in an industry that no one's filling and solve them. So with games, it's simply a game that is well designed and that people will enjoy, that solves their problem of boredom. So you can always create new games, and as new technologies come out, new types of games will emerge and new experiences. So I just honed in on that problem of boredom. In my specific challenge one day, I said, I want to, and that's what he says in the book, state your challenge. The more specific you can state your challenge, the more specific a result you can get. So I specifically stated the challenge of, I want to make a game that can be around in 40 years. And I honed that into, I want to make a game where you tap the screen and a ball goes up. So I had to not only make that general statement, but focus it on a specific type of game. So that same day, I created Color Switch, and what I did was I used that slice and dice technique, and I thought, you know what, if I want to make a game that'll be around in 40 years, I should look at games that have been around for 40 years. So I looked at Uno and Pac-Man. I slice and dice both of them, and in both of those games, I found that there was a color switching mechanic used in a different way, and it was a side mechanic. It wasn't the main theme of the game, but I honed in on that, and I made it the main theme of the game. And there were other things where I was kind of like blending this concept and that concept, but that was basically how I came across it. So I took the color switching from Pac-Man and the color switching from Uno, and realized that no one had ever made a big game with color switching as the main theme. But I I thought, well, if this color switching mechanic is in both of these billion-dollar IPs, there has to be something very powerful with that specific item, and so that's what I focused on, and that's how I essentially developed it.
Now I have to admit, I'm interviewing pioneers and video game industry people since 20 years, but you are the first person who tells me, oh, I read this book and I did what was written in that book.
Yeah.
Because normally when you go on the internet and you have something like, here is a book to success, people are more like, oh, that's a scam, don't buy this book is useless. And you are the first person, and you mentioned already 3 books in the first 10 minutes of our interview that you have read and that you based your decisions on. That's something really unique.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to, if you want, there's a definition for insanity. If you repeat the same thing expecting a different result, you'll go crazy. So how do you not repeat the same action which would get you the same result? You have to put new information in your brain, and your brain is basically a supercomputer, and it will create whatever you tell it to create. So if you have no new thoughts, you have no new ideas, which you're gonna get when you read a book. That's someone's wealth. And the most fundamental wealth is human capital. It's your brain, and it's the skill you acquire over years. And then if I take all that knowledge and that skill and I put it into a book, to me that's priceless, because there's no way I could ever have that person's experience and their same skill. And so when I purchase that book and I go through it and I ingest that information, you're actually ingesting their wealth in the format of that book. And then if you do that from a variety of books and a variety of resources, you're really just putting new information in your brain, and your brain's going to compute new actions, and therefore you get new results. And that's what Thinker Toys basically strips all that away and says, here is what everything in the world, whether it's organic or it's a thought from a person, this is what's happening. It's the idea of conceptual blending, where you're blending these concepts together, and your brain pops them out into new concepts, and then you create these things. And so it just shows you different ways to do that. And it's as simple as that. Oxygen and hydrogen together in certain amounts create water. A mother and a father create a child. And when you ingest a book combined with your brain, you have new thoughts and ideas. So
depending on the book, right? How good the book is. Depending on how good the book is.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You could also say, because the famous film director Stanley Kubrick, he actually said he learned a lot from bad films, because what it does is it makes you think, okay, how would I make that scene work? What's missing? Is it something with the blocking? Is it the cinematography? Is it the story? What's missing? How would you improve that? So even a book that you think is bad could actually have some idea in there that you could repurpose and do something great with. And that's why I say, most information has some value. It just when you learn how to just switch your perspectives and not and I think that's what a lot of people have been trained not to do. It's, hey, go to college, learn this. We already thought this out for you, and then go work here and think the same way. It's to different systems, benefits for people not to think for themselves and to just kind of toe the line. And so when the side effect of applying Thinker Toys techniques and kind of thinking like that is you break out of these kind of crystallized perspectives in anything, and you can kind of look at it from different ways. And some things are harder for people, like if you don't like a certain political figure, you'll think the same way about them throughout your entire life. But when you learn how to conceptually blend and whatnot, you could look at that person and maybe just as an exercise to use them as a metaphor to, hey, I like that person. Why do I like that person? Whereas before you just said, I don't like that person. And you can kind of just use them as a source for inspiration for ideas and whatnot. But it's pretty powerful to be able to become fluid with your thinking and not get so stuck in a perspective, because I think most often we can be our own worst enemy because we are stuck in perspectives and we are stuck in our assumptions, and that keeps us from ever achieving something big when we're trying to do so.
So you said at the beginning you looked at games like Pac-Man and other similar games from the 80s and so on, and looked and said like you had a color switching element and you made that the main element. What other decisions you made to get the color switching game on? Because I know when we emailed, I actually your brother actually wrote me. Yeah, I saw you like iOS more than Android, and I think our game works better on iOS. Look at the iOS version first. So and then I said like, hey, I have this Amazon Fire tablet. And then he was like, well, probably on the Fire tablet it will not be smooth enough. And I thought, why would that be a problem? I mean, it's a simple game, but it's really something that you have to consider when you release a mobile game. You have so many platforms, especially on Android, so many devices and so on.
Yeah.
And that is really making it difficult as a game developer, especially as you said, you are not a coder yourself. So that
No, I have programmers, and that's something that's ongoing where we are making sure it plays well on like $40 phones, because Android, there's so much, they use cheaper hardware in general, and there's so many devices, whereas iOS, Apple, okay, they got the iPhone 10, they got the iPhone 11, and it's higher end hardware, so when you fine tune it, it's good to go. And Android, there's so many variables, but it's something we've actually made it work on cheaper and cheaper phones, and we're still continuing that, and as well as a variety of things. But
it does work a lot nicely on my Android phone.
Oh, there we go.
It works nicely on my Android phone.
Oh, awesome. Which phone is that?
It's a LG G8.
G8. I don't know what that means because I'm not an Android user. Is that like a higher end one?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. What did I had a we had I have a $40 phone I got from South Africa, and it worked decently on there.
From South Africa. Oh my God.
Yeah, I went there for the first time this year, and back it was right when the whole pandemic stuff started creeping up, and we got out of there before it kind of took hold. I got a cheap phone while I was there for a variety of testing and whatnot. But yeah, to this day, my main skill is design. I don't worry about learning how to code or anything like that. You just hire the technicians you need, because if you try to and people have done that. If you try to do everything and you're basically just going to go down a variety of endless rabbit holes in learning all the different tech you have to learn, and you won't be able to accomplish a lot. Whereas if you are able to get that team and then you focus on what you enjoy and what you're good at, that's how you're going to have a quicker turnaround with everything you're trying to do.
What I wanted to say is I actually, when I did this research for this interview, I saw you actually held presentations about game design and so on, right?
Yeah, I've done a couple over the years. It's been a little while, so some of those are probably a couple years old. But this game came out in December of 2015, so a lot of those are probably from 16 and 17.
17, exactly. Yes.
And you ever heard of Toastmasters?
Not
yes,
me.
I have, yeah.
So it's an international public speaking organization, and I've been a Toastmaster for 9 years. And so before all this happened, I just had been going to meetings, and you go there and you do speeches, and you improve and you help each other out in improving, and you give impromptu speeches sometimes. Like someone will not show up. Hey guys, so and so didn't show up. Does anyone want to give an impromptu speech? And I've done that before, and so that prepared me for doing presentations of any kind, because you get to enjoy it, which sounds odd because most people would not enjoy that. it's a scary thing, but yeah, you do. You get to enjoy it. It's fun. It can be fun.
You know, it's different when you watch a presentation by somebody who is rather new in the business of game design, you know, than the 50s presentation of David Crane, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
like oh he has done this like 30 times 40 times before, you know. People even come up with their PowerPoint presentation. They make a variation every time, but it's still basic same presentation. So
Yeah.
for me, it was refreshing to see, you know, comparatively speaking, a newbie in this field talking about his experience and his journey into game design, you know.
Yeah, and I guess I have a pretty unique. I mean, that's the cool thing about this industry is you can enter it from any kind of pathway. There's some people who've they started working at a company as a programmer and eventually started their own company, or and then you got the guy who's cleaning swimming pools and making games at home. So it's really fun in a dynamic industry that way, where you can enter it from so many different avenues.
We have mentioned it before. We actually got in touch over Walter Day. How did you happen to know Walter Day, by the way? Because you said at the beginning you go rather well along with him.
Yes, so again, it goes to what I was saying earlier about ingesting new information. So that doesn't just have to be a book. And for me, it's any experience. So I had never gone to a retro convention, and I love retro games. If I showed you the other end of my room, there's probably 1,000 Nintendo and Super Nintendo games I'm looking at over there. And I love playing all the old stuff, because you got to know your history as a game designer, and you can get inspiration from Atari or Commodore games or ColecoVision, etc. And so I went to my first retro convention, because I've never been to one. And as soon as I enter there, I look over, and you can't miss Walter and Billy when you see them, and they're totally dressed the part and everything, and they were at a booth. And so we immediately went over there, because we were like, all right, we got to get some pictures with these guys. And yeah, I just became friends with Walter at that point. One of the nicest guys I ever met, and Billy's really nice too. I think he plays up his character from the movie.
Yeah.
But really nice guy. They actually both stayed at my house. I think last year. Walter had a birthday party at a pinball museum in Banning, I think, and so they stayed at my house and went to that, and that was a lot of fun. My funny story, well, not a funny story, but we were at the pinball museum, and someone runs in at the end of the night, and they said, we need a medic, and someone's outside, needs help. And me and my buddy were there, and we were both military medics. So we ran out, and someone had plowed their car into the building, and I mean, it was serious. And so we went, started checking out the girl. She reeked of alcohol, and not good. Now there was a car on the street that was smashed half in. And so we ran over there, and we're like, oh my gosh, who, is anyone in here? And we're just making sure no one was in there, because the license plate was like on top of the car. It was a mangled mess. And I had a couple other friends inside. My friend was looking at it too, and he's like, wow, look at this car. And he looked down the street, and he said, look down that way. He's like, I could have sworn I parked out here. And, and he looks up at the license plate. He's like, oh, it's my car.
Oh.
I think he had been planning on leaving earlier, so I was like, it's a good thing you didn't leave. You never know. So I don't know what happened with the girl. She was alive and everything. The cops came and paramedics and took over that situation. But yeah, that happened towards the end of the night over at the you never know what's going to happen to the pinball museum.
Yeah.
Wow.
I guess it's the moral of the story.
Actually interesting. You, by the way, mentioned you have to know your stuff history-wise when you are a
Yeah.
game designer, and that is the biggest problem when the game designers pick up an old IP and make a successor of it. I mean, when I go to conventions like Gamescom or any other conventions, and I'm talking to the young game designer in his 20s, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm making the new Larry game, you know? Or I'm making the new Need for Speed, and then I'm asking something like, yeah, so you are making the 50th version of Need for Speed. How does this cast interest for
Right.
the retro people that played the first game in '95? And then
Right.
they're like, they don't know what to answer, you know?
Yeah.
So that's often a problem that I cause a lot of to game designers when I
I
talk.
suppose, and you know that's why you're only gonna in any industry you're only gonna have a handful of people that really stick out because, like you know, if you think of Steven Spielberg for example, all the movies he's made that are iconic. Well, if you listen to him in an interview, he'll say you got to know your entire history of film. You got to watch the silent films. You got to learn from the John Ford. And sure enough, I'll watch an old John Ford film and I'll say, that's Spielberg. That's a Spielberg shot right there. And John Ford had done it in the 40s. So and that comes to he's not copying, but you're being inspired. It's like a jazz musician who will reference a lick from an old Miles Davis song and then do something different with it. And that's what conceptual blending is. It's taking what's been done and blending it into something new. And so no one, like if a iconic shot of a sunset from Lawrence of Arabia is done, doesn't mean they own it. But Spielberg, he'll put that shot in Empire of the Sun, or he'll put it in Indiana Jones when they're riding off into the sunset, which is the classic cowboy kind of ending. And it's not a copy. It's a visual film. It's visual film language that it gets repurposed and reused in different ways. And so that's the whole point of being aware of your history is take the things that inspire you, remix it and do something new with it. And even though in Pac-Man the color switching of eating that big pellet, the ghosts change color and you can eat them, even though the color changing was used, and it was also used in Mario when he gets the flower and his suit changes colors. It doesn't matter because we can all reuse it in some new way and create something new. And so not everyone does this. Not everyone works on knowing their history and being inspired, but instead, using lesser methods. And I don't think that's anything that will ever go away because it's just people have different wants and desires. Not everyone wants to work on being inspired or work on designing something at a high level. Maybe their main motivator is just, hey, I can probably make $1 million if I do this. And that's their motivator. So different things will get you different results, and I guess that's why why we're all different.
So now we spoke about the first color switch game.
Well, before we switch
Sure.
To something different.
Color switch.
Yes. I'd also like to talk about working with publishers because a lot of times we get we talk to games before they're out. Now, Color Switch has been out for a while. And there was a little bit of drama with the publisher of the game back in, I guess it was the end of 2017 or early 2018.
Yep.
How does that, and that was a conflict between the game designers, being you and your team, and the publisher who was putting it out. And how did that play out? Like what kinds of things did you have to deal with?
Well, that's still ongoing. I actually have an international case I'm fighting with them that's been going on since 2018. So there's probably a variety of things I couldn't talk about at this moment in time, but it'll be great for a follow-up interview once that's said and done. Because I just know from experience, anything during a case that's going, anything you say that could be kind of construed as this way or that way, that it can be done. So all I'll say is the key is, when I did that initial publisher contract, again, I'm the guy cleaning swimming pools, 80 grand in debt. I couldn't even afford a lawyer to look at the contract so I was someone who signed a contract who, terms were not explained to me that would could be read a variety of ways, and then it's kind of definitely a big learning experience, but yeah, it's still an ongoing case. And gosh, I remember reading about Ralph Baer, who invented the first home console. And he actually, I think Magnavox, I don't know if he sold the rights to the patent to Magnavox, I can't remember that, but I do know that they were in court for decades. I don't think I'm going to be in court for decades, but decades for all that to go on. And so, yeah, court stuff. I've learned so much about working with lawyers and legal this and legal that, and things that you don't think are going to take a long time. They definitely take longer than anticipated. But yeah, all that's ongoing, and totally up for a follow-up once it's all said and done, because it's a fascinating story. Just being the person going through all of it, I'm like, man, this is fascinating, all different things that have happened, because I've been to Dubai, I've been to court meetings there where I had to present my evidence, like, hey, I actually designed this, here's my original files and stuff like that. It's a very fascinating experience because of this. I had to go to court in another completely different legal system. So, but I would say what I would say to anyone with publishing deals, or just make sure you have a lawyer go over everything with you, and if you can't afford one, figure out some way to borrow $500 or whatever from someone so you can get that perspective, because especially if you have a game that is designed to be able to have an big impact, then also can create a big situation.
Right.
So I think I can say all that without getting myself in some kind of situation.
Yes.
Interesting that you mentioned it, Ralph Baer. I happen to be the last person who did an interview with Ralph Baer, and even the longest one. Yeah.
Wow.
And he even spoke about his court appearances and so on.
Yeah.
So maybe I should send you the link to that interview.
Yeah, I'd love to watch that.
It was a whole coincidence. Friends were like, Ralph Baer is already 90, so you should probably interview him soon. And then a few weeks after I released the interview, I heard the news that he actually died. So,
wow.
So,
he had a good run, though. He made it into the 90s. That's a pretty good run.
Right,
And
yeah.
Good take, and it's just an example of. I have a good friend, Richard Turner. He's the #1 card mechanic or card cheat in the world. If you Google him, you'll find his documentary that came out about him, and pretty fascinating. But he said, don't ever do tomorrow what you can do right now. Not even later today. If you know you could do it right now, do it right now. Because, and sure enough, there's a ton of things that I was, in my life I thought, I'll get to that later. That was 20 years ago.
Right.
So it's very true, and so it's great you took action on that, because as you said, you don't know what's going to happen. He was up in his 90s, and sure enough, 2 weeks later, you would not have had the opportunity, but now you have this archive that people can learn from. So
right, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned so much things and people that I already spoke to before. So it's like you already knew who I knew or something.
I'm inside your brain.
Or you read it in a book, who knows,
Yeah.
But that is something I didn't do yet. I didn't release a book yet, So now that we spoke about the court thing that of course you can't really talk about, let's move on. Color Switch 2.
Yes.
How did that happen? I mean, as we mentioned at the beginning, it's a total different concept, kind of.
Yeah. So the idea was, the first game, we have all these modes, And I thought, well, I don't want to do another 2D game because it'll feel, to me, I thought it would feel like another mode to people because it's kind of like we already did sequels in the game. So my main inspiration is my favorite video game company, which is Nintendo. And I thought, you know what? I remember having the experience going into Toys R Us and seeing Super Mario 64 for the first time and being blown away because that was the first time I saw Mario in 3D. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, I'll do that jump. I'll jump from Super Mario to Super Mario 64 with Color Switch 2. And so the inspirations for it were a lot of 80s stuff. I mean, was not Mario Kart, but it was Mario Kart, just the overall general visual aesthetic of Nintendo, Blade Runner, Tron, specifically the Tron Legacy trailer for Tron 2. I love the light cycle, how it went kind of underneath the main level. Yeah. And so when you play my game, sometimes a road will open right under you and you'll go into a tunnel and get a bunch of stars or whatever. And so that was part of the inspiration because plus I looked at all these 3D games that were on the App Store and I said, nobody has like a multi-level road, and I thought it'd be cool because even any racing game I've ever played, you see a tunnel coming up, but you don't have the road open up, and then you're just pushed into a tunnel. So I thought that would be a fun way to surprise people, and so yeah, it was a lot of those inspirations. It was a lot of looking at what's on the App Store, what are these 3D games that are doing well, where you're going down a road. And what can I add to it? Again, I would slice and dice, and I would find kind of things I could add. So I added I also noticed that there's only one camera perspective usually, so I added a bunch of different ones. So when you change the camera during the gameplay, the feeling of the game can be more or less intense, and that can change. Yeah, how
I also read the reviews, and some actually said that was a negative point. The changing camera angle. Yeah,
well, I mean, you can also look at Color Switch 1, and there's 1-star reviews of people who hate it. So yeah, you can't make everyone happy for sure. And some people will look at it as, oh, look at this gimmick or whatever. But a lot of thought actually went into it because I was like, the goal was how can I surprise players and make them feel excited as they play the game, and the key for me was, okay, I'll add surprising tunnels, I'll add camera changes, and I will have the experience where you're going through a city at night, because I thought, well, what could people relate to for a 3D game? You could just go straight minimalistic, but I thought, well, it'd be cool to maybe have like a minimalistic city lit up. And then that also allowed us to put video ads in the game on the buildings, etc. Because that also happens when you go to a city. You see video ads on the buildings. But yeah, I did see a couple of comments where people, but you'll see both. You'll see people, I love this game, this and that, and then you'll have people who, I don't like the camera changes, whatever. And it just goes to, you do want to listen to customer feedback. So if I saw an overwhelming amount of people who were like, I hate this camera change, and it was like 90-something% of people, then we'd probably get rid of most of the cameras, or we might alter it in some way so that the people who are playing it are enjoying it. So you can always, and that's a great thing about games, is you can always adjust things, and that's key to any product. What's the customer feedback? The customer feedback for a lot of the latest Star Wars films wasn't great, and so now going forward, they're going to have to consider that because you ultimately, Star Wars, for example, is a product, and people are used to that product being designed a certain way, and when you go away from that in a major way, your customer is not going to be happy, and you're going to lose revenue, etc. So
it depends. I mean, if you, for example, compare the Ghostbusters movie, I personally didn't think it was such a downer that the main actors were female. I didn't think that this would make the movie bad, but for some people it was. But the difference between a movie and the game is, if somebody doesn't like the camera angle changing, you can just say, make it an option and let people switch off. But if you watch the new game, if you watch the latest Ghostbusters movie, you can't make an option for male characters.
Yeah.
That's the main difference here.
If you did, you would get yourself in a big trouble. Like, oh, we'll just switch out the actors CGI with CGI characters.
Well, that gets into
I think
film theory too, and the fact that a lot of people when they get into stuff like that, they're not looking at it from a specific school of film critic theory, but they're looking at it from canon, and that's not you can't really do that and still judge a film's merits.
Right, and I mean, I also think it's like I think I saw half of that movie and I didn't finish the rest. For me, it was more of a directing problem, because like if you look at someone like Mel Gibson and his film Apocalypto, a lot of those actors never acted before. And so when you get a really good director, you can get a really good performance out of someone who doesn't even have any acting skills. And so I felt if I see people on the screen who are doing things that aren't funny or that I don't feel are funny or the scene's not compelling, I say, okay, well, it's more of a technical thing, like the director. It's not it's not the actor's fault, but they'll get the blame because they're the visual person you see for a lot of people who don't understand the filmmaking process. Right. So, but because you could have Bill Murray and the whole crew in there, which we've seen movies where you have the actual original cast, and it's still like, this doesn't feel, because it is a challenge to, okay, how do we top ourselves? How do we actually make another product with this franchise that's also great? And you can't say, okay, let's make a iconic film. No one can, like Spielberg with E.T. couldn't say, okay, E.T. for sure is going to be iconic and this and that, or Jaws. I think he said Jaws was his most difficult film ever to make, and they really had to make things work in editing because the shark wouldn't work, and so they had to get creative with how they represented the shark. And so yeah, there's a lot of factors that go into a lot of these things. And gosh, Sergio, I was just reading about Sergio Leone, who's famous for the spaghetti westerns with Clint Eastwood. Mm-hmm. His last film, he spent 10 years prepping, and it was a financial failure. And he died before he made another film. And so you're thinking like, whoa, even this guy who had all the success through his career, his last film was a financial failure. But it doesn't matter, because in the end, as long as you're always learning, you're going to have some things that hit really big, some things that don't, some things in the middle, or if you're like Spielberg, you could have a lot of hits, but he still had failures. Like his 1941 was supposed to be a comedy, and he was not. He said, that was the last comedy I made because I'm not great at that kind of filmmaking. So you think the most technically proficient filmmaker, the most financially successful one ever, even he can't do everything great. And so it's kind of like the idea of just focusing on what you can do well and hopefully producing consistency. And for that Ghostbusters film, I don't know the details, but I would guess that it's not the same team behind the scenes who produced the originals. No. And so you might have the franchise, but when you get different people behind it, you're going to have different results. It's impossible not to. And so, there's just all sorts of stuff to factor in. And that's why the new Star Wars films were so different, because George Lucas isn't behind him anymore. And he was the main creative force. But even he couldn't meet fan expectations with the So even these successful, top-of-the-field guys cannot be successful every single time. Not possible, but you can always learn and just keep going.
What was George Lucas was already criticized for is like, let's do a remake, let's do a remaster, let's changing whole scenes of the movie because now we have the technology.
I don't disagree with that with doing that either, because he's kind of famous for saying that, like, you're someone's work is never quite, you never finish a work.
Yeah.
And so, like, he likes to go back and change it, and people have a real issue with that. The only issue I ever had with any of it is him putting "no" into the last Darth Vader scene. That irritates me. But again, that's what the movie is now. So you live with it.
Yeah, anyway, for over 10 years, there was no way to purchase as a individual in the store the original unedited version.
Right.
Just a few years ago, they released it on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Really?
And yeah.
The original, because I thought it was only. I have DVD. It's actually on these DVDs. It's like a special feature where you can watch the originals.
Yes.
And
Right.
I didn't know they had it on Blu-ray.
Right. But the problem is, as technology changes, suddenly you are moving to a new technology, and people who just started collecting movies don't have the chance to go back to the other version on VHS or whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it's always a big problem. So, but interesting that you compare video game producing with movies.
Well, think about it. You have a lot of similarities. You have cinematography. You have there can be acting. There's any kind of visual you can think of, music, any kind of audio, any kind of medium, any kind of art medium. You can put it all into a video game. Now, Color Switch, of course, doesn't have all that, but Halo does. And a lot of the cinematography that you'd find in a film can be in the cutscenes of Halo. So yeah, video games really is kind of the ultimate art form because you can put anything into it and utilize it.
It's all depending on storytelling.
Game. Yeah, and what are we going to do when the video game experience is you as Luke Skywalker going through the actual film scene by scene, like you're there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be powerful, and that could be way more powerful than just passively watching a film because now you are the hero, you are doing these things, you're having these experiences that because what if they come out with a machine that you can put in your house that when you get into it and you got your VR on, it feels like you're in the Falcon or it feels like you're in the land speeder, depending on how it adjusts its mechanics. So
well, this would kind of be going back to the old form of storytelling too, which is that it's only been in the last 100 years or so that storytelling turned into what it is now. Like it used to be an interactive experience. You'd have someone there talking, and the people that were listening would be interacting, and there would be some back and forth. And now it's just these static book or a movie, and you sit and you watch it, and there's no interaction. You don't do anything with it. And video games kind of get back to that.
Yeah,
that original interactive storytelling aspect.
I was in Tokyo in 2018, and I went to their VR center, and they had VR Mario Kart, and they had a cart that you actually got in, and it would move around, and it was a lot of fun. They had ones where you're in a giant mech. They had where you're canoeing. A lot of the experiences were pretty powerful, and you could still see that they had a lot of growth to happen over the next couple of years, but even where they were very powerful. So yeah, interactivity is going to get. I think seems like where video games are going. And I think you'll probably always have some format for the non-gamer who just wants to pick up a game for a couple minutes, like the mobile game market is mostly comprised of. But there's sky's the limit for where video games are going to go in all these ways, which is cool because when you create a game that does really well, you can always repurpose that for the new technologies as they come out. Because look at Pac-Man, it started on a giant arcade that weighed a ton, and now you can play it on your mobile phone, you can play it on your consoles, you can download it, you can stream it, whatever. Yep. Even Google had it where you could play on the web browser.
True.
So once you create that IP and that product, you can get mileage out of it for forever.
So is that your plan for Color Switch, to get an IP like mileage from it?
Yeah. I feel like the original for sure. I mean, we still do that's our flagship product, and that's still doing really well to this day. And as technologies come out, we're going to do the same thing where we repurpose it for the different formats, and then under that brand, I have dozens and dozens of Color Switch branded games under that brand that are different game experiences that we're going to be coming out with. We might come out with 3 games this year that are hyper casual, very, very minimalistic, that wouldn't take us too long to build. But I've got a variety of games in mind for that brand, because again, once once Coca-Cola creates Coca-Cola, they create Cherry Coke, they create Diet Coke,
lemon.
just do
Lemon.
updates to your product, and
Yeah,
so
here in German, lemon is big.
Really? Ew.
Yeah, here in German, lemon is big.
Okay.
lemon, okay. Lemon. Well, we got lemon lime. Lemon lime is a big U.S. kind of flavor. Lemon lime, and even like at a bar, people will put like a Sprite mixed with whatever. So it'll be fun to see what new technologies come out, and we'll just, like I said, repurpose our flagship product, but then also come out with a variety of games under the brand, because it's so minimalistic. It's kind of like the T-1000 from Terminator 2. We can form ourselves into whatever we want to be because we're starting at a minimalistic spot.
Like Arnold Schwarzenegger said, "I'm old but not obsolete." Yeah.
Right.
So this would perfectly fit to this new console that's coming out next year. The Amico from Intellivision. I don't know if you have heard about that.
No, I hadn't heard about it.
Ooh.
I know
Wow.
Intellivision,
You're
but I
about
know
to.
they're coming out with a new console.
No, Tommy Tallarico, the composer who also worked on Earthworm Jim, is together with Hans Eppisch, who released the first censored video game in Germany.
Yeah.
They are working together on recreating the casual gaming experience,
Oh,
Yeah.
and so
Intellivision.
they want to enter the casual gaming market again.
Yeah. I'll have to
Yeah.
look into that.
Yeah, so I see after this interview, I have to send you a couple
Yeah.
of links with interviews and podcasts we did. So maybe that is something, because I know that the 2 guys from Intellivision are always looking for new games to put into the console, and publishing it on the market for the Amico platform. So maybe that is something,
Yeah.
Because for me it sounds like a perfect match, because it's very casual gaming, but it's not like super easy. You
Right.
have to get a hang of it, but it's not as frustrating as Flappy Bird,
Right. Yeah. Not that. But it's funny. People have compared it to that game many, many times, because you're going through a constant barrage of obstacles. But definitely not as hard as Flappy Bird, because that game was pretty difficult.
And this guy made millions within weeks, and he wasn't happy with it. So
No, I apparently he lived in a small village, and he was just a very introverted guy, and he got a lot of people sending him messages and everything, and he did not like that.
He couldn't handle all this fame and interest in his person throughout the game. Exactly. You know your stuff. Impressive.
I try. I mean, the goal is to learn something new every day. So I'm learning from this interview. I've learned some things, and always trying to utilize the time, because, like I said, before you know it, 20 years is gone. You're like, whoa, how did that happen? I remember when I joined the military, and you join, and it's an 8-year contract, and you're thinking, this is never going to end. And gosh, that ended. The actual contract ended 9 years ago. So time, being slow as an illusion is pretty fast. So don't waste it.
Interesting. So you have plans for Color Switch, as I figure, yeah. But so a Switch physical release would be something, perhaps.
Oh, what?
A Switch physical release would be probably something.
Yeah, we would like to we were working on the sequel for a long time, and we're just working on a variety of titles to beef up everything, and then once we do that, then we want to start kind of branching out to more and more different things and focus on it could be getting on the Switch, or I know it's a whole different political system to get on a console, so that's probably something to partner with someone to help that make be a smooth thing, and be great to. I mean, one of my personal things I'd like to do is just have an Atari version, Nintendo Entertainment System version of Color Switch, actually coded, and get like an actual cartridge produced in the box and everything, just so I could have it. Because I know that the creator of Halo did that. He created a version of Halo for Atari 2600. So it would be more of a fun thing to do, just for my own personal.
Just the problem with Switch and independent developers that really frustrates me is they usually go with limited run or signature games, and those publishers, when you try to order such a game, they are sold out within 5 minutes or something.
Oh wow!
So the chance that you actually get a physical release is very low. And then a few weeks later, you find them for $150 on eBay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh my god, oh my god, oh
It's
my
like
god.
when I was a kid and you're looking for the new toy, and the guys who buy them all up, they sell them in the comic book store for, $100, $200.
Yeah. So I hope if you really come out with a Switch version, you go a different publishing route.
We'll do our best. So
Because that is always frustrating, Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have the other thing that some publishers make contracts with both companies, and one is European and one is American, and the American is getting the exclusive first, and then as a European you pay triple the shipping and customs, and then a few weeks later you get the same game for cheaper without the high shipping and without the VAT by customs within Germany. I'm like, oh my god, or within Europe, and you are like, why didn't they tell you that? Because they weren't allowed because of contracting. Well, that's nice. So, fortunately, in this very case, that was actually I have it here. It was Streets of Rage 4. That was actually the game where they had this shady.
Isn't that an old game where it was like 90s or something?
Exactly for the Mega Drive, which is called Genesis in America. But they made recently a physical version, and fortunately, I read about this bullshit publishing trick on Twitter before I ordered it from America. So I was one of the few people that was lucky to not buy it for expensive means. But it's really something that makes me sour that I mean, being something limited edition is good, but having something limited that's sold out within 5 minutes, even if you try hard, that's really not
Don't worry,
so
no
nice.
matter what they do, we will not let them put us in a sour mood.
It's just something I've noticed for the Switch and other platforms, kind of, and so right. Well, then it's even better to make a Kickstarter, because then you're getting your item in the long run, even if it takes longer,
Yeah, because you lock in. Yeah. Oh, that reminds me of the Atari that was supposed to come out like a year and a half ago. I locked that in. Been waiting for a while for that to come out.
Oh yeah. They have been up and down that maybe something shady is about it, and then they said no, it's not. And we'll see what that happens.
Yeah, we'll see. Still waiting.
So, is there anything that's coming out soon after Color Switch 2 that you can tell us about that isn't a secret?
I mean, like I said, we have a variety of hyper casual games we're gonna come out with, and can't get too. I mean, that's the thing with games. I mean, you can expect people. I mean, we have taken down over 2,000 Color Switch clones. As soon as the game comes out, people start cloning it. Flappy Bird had a lot of clones, so even if someone watched this and they heard like a detailed description, they'd be like, I'll start building that. So all I can say is there's a variety of hyper casual games. There's a lot of different games that will it involve actual characters and things? Because, like I said, we'll get very specific in different ways. And I mean, there's no limit to where I feel like we can stretch the brand because, again, very minimalist. I mean, look at Mario. Look how many he was a jumping guy in Donkey Kong, and now you got all these crazy experiences with all these different 3D games and Mario Kart and all these different things. And so, really, Nintendo is an example of showing that if you can think of a way to stretch your brand, you can make it work. You just have to make sure the experience is designed well, and that's why the industry came back in the States, because their number one priority was game design, whereas that hadn't been, and so everyone hated games for a little bit because the games that were coming out weren't very good. I mean, the famous ones being E.T. on the 2600 and Pac-Man.
We had a 3 hours interview with Joe Lewandowski about this topic, how he did this dig in the desert of New Mexico, digging up all the consoles and cartridge that was buried down thanks to the video game crash in 83.
Yeah,
and that is actually why the Nintendo Entertainment System is called Nintendo Entertainment System.
Yes.
And it's looking like a DVD player because they wanted to make it look like an appliance for the TV record.
Switcheroo on all the department stores.
Yeah.
It had to rob the robot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that robot thing never came to Europe. But then we didn't.
Smash Brothers.
Right. But then we didn't have the video game crash here in Europe.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think Japan had either. It was mainly America, and I can't remember who else. If there was anyone else.
Yeah. No, it was mainly America. Yeah.
So where can people go to find out about Color Switch and Color Switch 2? And where can they find the game?
Well, it's going to be on Google Play and iOS. Now, if you go to our website, colorswitchworld.com, it'll just redirect you to the App Store. Mm-hmm. We have our colorswitch.co company website, but we just acquired colorswitch.com. Someone had it for a long time, and we finally got colorswitch.com because so many people email me and it doesn't go through, and it's .co, not .com. And so we'll be setting that up pretty soon, but right now it's colorswitch.co, will be colorswitch.com, and then colorswitchworld.com. And we have an Instagram for Color Switch that people can follow for updates and whatnot, and we also have a Facebook page.
Cool. And we will put links to all of that in the podcast description.
I see that you have a Color Switch t-shirt on, right?
Yes, Color Switch. I am legally obligated to wear branding during this interview.
Nice. Yeah, it's very interesting to meet somebody who isn't originally a game designer, as I said, a pool cleaner, and then reaching out and actually entering this world. Nice.
I will have to send you guys. I have a keynote where I showed all my previous games, and if you looked at this game that was before Color Switch and then Color Switch, you wouldn't know the same person created it because the design is completely different. Because again, I was making all these games that didn't do well, and I had to change how I went about it, and it's night and day. And I didn't mention, there was an entire year between the game before Color Switch and Color Switch. So anywhere in that year, I could have just given up and never known that the next game would be the one that took off, because it was a very frustrating process. I would get depressed all the time because I just wasn't getting any results at all. And again, it goes back to that doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Well, I did that 40 times in a row, and it didn't feel like I was making progress, but I was, because I was ingesting new information and kind of thinking about everything. But yeah, it was a whole year between those games. And that's why I always tell people, don't ever give yourself a time limit, because you can't choose when something's going to happen. All you can do is choose to take action. And I think it was Wayne Gretzky who said, you'll miss 100% of the shots you never take.
Yeah.
So there's all these people who just don't take a shot because of whatever reason, or they stop taking shots. And really, you gotta be willing to stay with it, and until you get to the goal you're trying to get to. And because we can't tell the future, and so all you can do is improve your thinking so that you can't guarantee results, but by improving your thinking and constantly adapting and evolving that, and not staying stuck in something you did a year ago, that's how you can have the best chance of success, even though it's not guaranteed. But the key is how you think and how you process experiences is your choice, and that is something that you're in charge of, even if you're not in charge of how you look or where you're born and all these things. So that was in my head of, okay, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to do this until I figure out the solution. And then that's how I finally got.
And as we figured out doing these interviews, there is still, despite of the internet, still different scenes and separated users in the game industry and computer industry in general. Look at Hungary, that had its own history for retro gaming, or just recently we did an interview about the Russian video game industry and computer industry.
And I don't think about those industries. So there's a lot I gotta learn from all that. If there's any link to that stuff, you can send those too.
Not released yet, but once it is, we'll let you know.
Oh yeah, if you come out with any books about anything retro gaming, which sounds like you could because you have a lot of knowledge in that area, I buy all that stuff. I have so many books about retro games, and Atari has a great book which it's on my bookshelf at the moment, but it was like an 800-page book about the whole history of Atari, and I find it fascinating.
Well, I don't read so much books anymore. I'm mostly watching stuff on YouTube. That is how I found your presentations.
Oh.
And reading a lot of Wikipedia entry, and entering tons of discussions where people think they know the truth, despite they are wrong, and then they are insisting about insisting on being right. And
that is a interesting phenomenon, because before I made before I got into games, or right when I got into games, people, and I think they do it with the intention to help you, but it actually holds people back, and that's where they say, oh, you should do this instead, or why is he making games? He's not going to be successful with that. He's not going to make any money with that. He should go get a regular job. And people, when they don't understand something, they it's like your parents, your friends, or whatever, they're trying, in their mind, they're trying to help you. They're trying to keep you from getting into something where you're going to waste time or money or go bankrupt. And so, but it is an interesting phenomenon where people who know nothing about the actual topic have such strong opinions about it.
Yeah.
Like, to say that games don't make any money, that just blows my mind that someone has that opinion when there's a whole industry, and there's been an industry since games came out.
Right.
It just blows my mind that people think they don't make any money, for one thing, but people do have very strong opinions, and they'll just lock into them. And that's what I was talking about earlier, where having the ability to have flexible thinking and not be stuck in one perspective is essential for creating things, and just being able to improve your own life in general, because oftentimes we are our own worst enemy, on a small or big level.
True.
Yeah.
I see why you get along with Walter Day so much. He has the same kind of argumenting and background stuff and stories and theories. You are thinking the same way.
I look forward to possible future adventures with Walter, because he's a lot of fun to hang out with.
Yeah, he talks a lot like you. And of course, if you want to make a follow-up with us, once you can talk about this grant and publisher issues, you're welcome anytime.
I'm going to be coming out eventually with a book, and like I said, there's just so many things that have happened. It's pretty fascinating just to be kind of on the inside. And yeah, when so maybe when all that's over, I'll have a book that will have some interesting things in it too. But totally, that'd be awesome. I will look forward to it.
Awesome.
Great.
So yeah, awesome.
Nice.
Well,
nice.
it was a
Thanks.
pleasure meeting both of you.
Yes, indeed.
Enjoyed the time with you guys, and it'll be fun to do another one later on.
Yeah.
Sure, definitely. Good luck at court
Thank you.
and stuff.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
See you guys. Bye.